I'll tell you right now, my daughter uses AI more than I do. And she's a freshman in college. And so she utilizes these things that I speak about probably better and faster than I do, but it's just how they've come into it. Someone looks at an operator's running everywhere and making adjustments, like, oh, they're working really hard. And I can tell you, you look at the operator who's doing nothing, that's on their phone or looking around bored, that's the best line you have, because it's running at a steady state, very efficient, and not needs the engagement or intervention.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Practitioners Unplugged podcast, where we dive into real-world stories and strategies of manufacturing digital transformation. Join us as we hear from thought leaders and innovators who are driving the change and shaping the future of Industry 4.0. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just curious about the future of manufacturing, this podcast is for you. Today on episode 9, we're doing things a little different. We're here live at Automate in Detroit, trying to figure out what's going on at the show, learning from a couple of guests. Today, we're actually joined by Daniel Harr, CEO of Delta Systems. We spent a lot on the manufacturing side and some of the technologists. We wanted to change things up, get a little OEM perspective today to figure out how people are making their systems, their machines, more geared towards the future. So with that being said, Daniel, I'll pass it over to you. Can you introduce us? Tell me a little about yourself, your history, what your company does.
Yeah, Dante, thank you. And thank you, Sri, for you guys having me. It's fantastic to be at the show. It's exciting. It will be a little loud at times because of equipment going. But as Dante said, I'm Daniel Harr. I'm the CEO of Delta Systems. I've been in the aspects of the industry for over 20 years, maybe 25 years. I spent the last 12 years at Delta Systems in various roles in supply chain, customer care, operations, general manager for a long stretch before assuming the role of CEO in my second year now. So Delta Systems, we're based out of Northwest Arkansas. We have I say brand new state-of-the-art manufacturing facility, but we're 8 years into it, but it takes care of itself and we take care of it. We build custom automated flow wrapping solutions for our end users. 80% of our volume is pretty much the food manufacturers, food suppliers. So the fun of the pandemic being the essential workforce and going through that drove a big push to automation and companies trying to automate more as they were in the throes of labor force issues and trying to maintain the food supply for America during that time. We've been in business for about 35 years. We primarily do primary packaging on horizontal flow wrap. So the best way to describe that is when you go into a retail or a gas station and there's that rack of food that is donuts and Twinkies and fruit pies, protein bars and snack bars. All of that is made by process equipment, and then we take up in the footprint of that factory and distribute it. Sometimes it's simple conveying, sometimes it's complex distribution systems with robotics and vision and quality, all to meter in time and get it into a wrap to do that primary packaging. From there, we'll take it on and either to another OEM or something in our group company to go to secondary packaging, which would be cartoning, and then on to case packing, and then on to palletizing, and then hits distribution. So our main area is focused on solving a need to help companies have higher quality, higher efficiency while safe, and able to do it with a lesser workforce, but changing kind of the job of that workforce to get their product wrapped.
Very cool. As you know, these challenges, like you said, workforce empowerment, not having the manufacturing footprint, we're talking about, reshoring a lot of that. What is the push for automation? Have you seen your business pick up more? You're also a piece within like a system of systems, let's call it. How do you maintain that interoperability upstream and downstream to coordinate that? What are you seeing from kind of like the end users and how is like data transforming the way that your machines operate?
So for the first part of the question, the push, a lot of things very unique to the pandemic is, I think everyone remembers, a lot of things had to go to individual wrap, right? So stuff that was never packaged before, business just shot up of people trying to individually wrap everything that used to be open a case and grab a donut. That kind of shifted even the landscape for consumers of, hey, I don't want people on that. I want it individually wrapped. across the board, even things not food. Wrapping just picked up a lot that drove it. The challenge at the same time is that labor shortage and kind of what we saw coming out of it, where people are having a hard time staffing the business moving that way. It drove automation, because you can go into a place, a factory that maybe has hundreds of people across 3 shifts on automated systems from front to back that run 24 hours a day, sometimes for weeks on end, and only stops for sanitation or a maintenance cycle. It drove automation to go that way. Along with it was the things you talked about, is like, okay, now that's changed that landscape, and it's changed from repetitive, harder quality of life work. It changed those positions into requiring fewer people, but those people kind of moving towards a operator, engineer type level job instead of repetitive motion. And how do you make that machine and those systems not complex? So we're trying to drive that down to make them more autonomous, less engagement needed to run. And part of that for the end user is then capturing the data and showing failure points and reset codes, and how to maintain and let it run without that interaction.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point. So how do you leverage maintaining reliability of the systems and fancy new shining objects and analytics that are built in that people are requesting?
Yeah, that's it's kind of twofold. Concurrently with everything that happened in the prior years, before that, it started to shift with end users and corporations. They used to have very robust in-house engineering departments, maintenance departments. So you'd almost have 2 levels of crews: the people operating, and then the people that come in and try to maintain and fix and correct. And it used to be a day that if something happened, they would raise a flag. They'd wait for someone qualified to come over and try to adjust and fix it. And kind of through that collaboration of those companies have moved away from that and pushed upstream of like, hey, why don't you guys have it run better? Why don't you have it to where it's easier to operate and fix? Why don't you guide us through those resets and those fixings, and push it back? So part of it is for us that it's made us robust for OEMs to have very good customer care groups, field service engineers when necessary, remote support, remote connectivity. So from our plant globally, we can go in and look at a machine and help them maybe undo edits or fine tune to a product that's changed. And pushing towards like service maintenance agreements. So like, hey, we'll come out quarterly based on your run rates, the machine you have, what your belting is, that kind of sets the tone of we can come in and touch and suggest edits and do some PM so you're not running to failure. So it's kind of been that push from the end user back up to the OEM of like, hey, you solved it for us by making it easier to run, easier to operate and reset. And when something is necessary, you guys staff and you guys come do it and guide us through it, because we're a baker, we're not a machine maker. So it's kind of shifted, not because of the pandemic, but during that time that it's kind of pushed the work that way.
Yeah, the shift towards Lifecycle services was already underway.
Right.
But I think as some of the skills, let's say, leave the market, they're asking the ecosystem partners to, get in the pit.
Right. Right.
Whether remotely or there,
right,
to do these things.
And we're at that level now, and many OEMs are like, yeah, they give the service, they give the remote. Some are stepping into like what I mentioned, like maintenance agreements of coming out and fixing and maintaining. That next evolution that some will step into and maybe we'll step into as you get into service agreements, that here's this equipment and the equipment provider says it will run at 95% efficiency throughput, and we're there to make sure that happens. So it's maybe a position that stays at that plant, not part of their company, but part of ours, to help facilitate that, and it's based not on what PM's necessary, like they maintain, the manufacturer maintains the equipment, and the agreement is to that service level of what it can run at and perform at. And I think for some industries, it's going to move that way.
Yeah. So if we follow this trend, so one of the things that's interesting is that post-pandemic and even now, there is a recognition for more agility, flexibility, etc. Yeah, easier said than done.
Right.
So in a supply chain context, there is this adage that you can have an efficient supply chain or a responsive supply chain, but not both. And I think that's sort of a challenge that maybe that's not well understood. So when when the leadership, when management asks for, hey, we want our factories to be more flexible, what are your perspectives in when designing automation systems, and they're traditionally designed for velocity and efficiency, right? How do you bring in flexibility?
So for us, and there's some end users out there that do it very well, and aside from the points you mentioned, there's the renewability and sustainability that's pushing companies towards goals. So flexibility comes into that. So we have installations and projects where we partnered with end users, where we build a machine that can handle the hard film. Not hard film's kind of when you tear open like a candy bar, that's considered a hard film because of the material. And in a changeover, and it's an involved changeover, it takes some time. It's a flexible asset for them, so it's not a quick changeover, but you can change out components of the machine and convert it to a soft film machine. And soft film is, when you get a bubble gum or a package of mints, and it's that shrink film on it that you tear off. They handle through automation completely differently, and they're different structures and everything. But instead of this customer having to then have an asset that's no longer usable because they went to a different film structure, the asset's flexible for them in the upfront design that it can change over, and then they can run a different film to run their different product. Flexibility is also what marketing is driving and what consumers want. What's that new snack, and what's this new flavor, and here's the new treat that we're wrapping seasonally, or it launches and it goes big. So even on hardline automation and systems we've designed that have been out there for 20 years or 10 years or 2 years, we're able to help with upgrades and change parts through that service loop with them to adapt it to the new product, or give them the one-off and let them test it and then move or convert it back. So it's a push from the end user, but it's coming from different levels. If it's sustainability and reliability, or just pure marketing, if they want to do different things, or change the size, or reduce the size, with hardline automation, you have to be able to address that, and you have to stay flexible with it.
Yeah. So would you say that flexibility is something that ideally needs to be designed up front? It's harder to design make it flexible after the fact.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost it applies to everything. In our panel talk yesterday, we were talking about, not trying to jump subjects, but how AI is going to get involved in what you do with data. And the first thing said is you have to have the vision first of where you want to go, or you just end up going different ways. So up front, it worked well in agreements of realizing like, hey, we have all these assets from you. And is there a path that we can develop to make them flexible? So we had the goal, we had the mission, we designed up front for it, and that is extra design, and it makes the machine different to be able to accommodate that. Where if it's not part of your vision and you're not doing it, you can get into a lesser footprint, lesser cost, higher performance, higher efficiency to stay just with the hardline automation, and it's a little more difficult when they come back and that need comes of can we add this and change that? And then you're structurally changing the footprint and layout, and you're a slave to the facility and the other equipment. And it's a lot more challenge then, and then it's done more of a plug and play of a swap out. But doing it up front with vision absolutely is the better way of having that path. And it's those companies that are setting those goals for their sustainability and such that are starting on those paths of collaboration upstream and all the way upstream sometimes to make sure that we're ready for that future.
Yeah. So just a little bit more on the topic of flexibility. It was interesting during the pandemic when so many things shut down, consumer packaged goods companies actually scaled back on their SKUs.
Yeah.
Right? And then it started to creep back up again. And sometimes you wonder, do we actually need 24 flavors of something or another, right?
Right.
Just because the customer wants variety, what is the cost of providing that variety, the cost of providing that flexibility? So would you say that there's an added cost to designing in flexibility? I know it's costlier later.
Right.
How much more expensive is it Yeah.
I say up front, it is a slight increase when you go on that path to design that way.
Yeah.
It is a lot more expensive on the back end, which sometimes, again, drives you to buy new assets or change your complete footprints to run it that way. Very specific to the food industry that we play in so much is, I was talking to Dante earlier, there's companies that have full lines and they make their product, but the way they introduce their new product is they outsource it to co-packers. So there's whole businesses like 3PL, when you're talking distribution, that do nothing but produce it and primary package it, and they're kind of a jack of all trades. So they're not going to be the fastest and most efficient, but they're very flexible. So they can take on from anyone and say, okay, you want to try this new shape or this new flavor or new toppings, but you need it packaged and it still needs to be your film and your product. They have channels to do that they know are not as cost efficient as maintaining it and running it in-house, but it's better for them if it doesn't take off or it gets to a level that then they bring it in and it just gets backfilled by them or another producer out there that go to these companies and say, hey, we want to do this, we want to do a bar, we want to do a bag of chips, we want to do a muffin. And these companies are very flexible and agile that buy equipment and do more work from us of the changeover and the upgrades and rebuilds than a company that's brought it inside and running their own production because it's set, it's got the volume, they're able to forecast it. And when you see that on the shelf where something says new or new and improved, most likely it was put through another channel to make sure that it's sustainable, that it's wanted by consumers and will take off for what marketing's doing.
Yeah. So one of the things, what you say really gels with some of the things we've heard from our large food and bev consumer packaged goods companies. In fact, one of them, so right after the pandemic and what they learned from that, they said we have three types of factory operating models. They said we have a cost factory, and then we have a launch factory and a flex factory. So the cost factory is, I'm competing on razor thin margins,
right,
and designing it that way. No, not too many changeovers, etc.
Right.
Then the launch factory, again, lots of new product launches that happen. They basically said, we're not good at running cost, we're not good at anything besides cost factories. Our whole measurements are driven that way. So we just contracted it out to all the launch factory model.
Exactly.
And the hardest thing to do is the flex factory, this idea that I can be efficient, whenever possible and responsive when necessary, because that actually requires, smart people.
Right.
Who can actually understand the nuances, still be flexible and still ensure profitability.
Right.
But what you're saying really, sort of lines up with a lot of this, I think, is sort of post-pandemic, lessons learned thinking.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. It made those companies agile and even across other industries, everyone knew like, hey, we have to adapt because what's the next one or what's going to drive that next push and change. I think changes throughout history were all driven by something, the catalyst or the tipping point where it all occurred.
Yeah.
And what we're really good at in America is like adapting with that and trying to lead and on the forefront to adapt to it. And that's what helps drive some innovation. I like to think some of it comes just because we're innovative or we're doing it, but usually there's something that's pushing it. Whether it's pushed from manufacturer side or upstream and what technology is coming downstream to us that then we can offer out. But it is a loop because sometimes it's the end user saying, hey, we have to be able to do this. We have to be flexible. We have to be able to scale. Or in our cost factors, we have to be faster, more efficient, safe, and maintain quality. And there is you like to think there's that sweet spot in the middle where you can do that as a manufacturer, but sometimes it's changed for us of like, let's come out with a new model, let's make a flexible asset, let's get faster and increase speeds and maintain quality. And innovation and technology advances, and when you stay with it, kind of help push you that way and keep you on track with it.
Yeah. Speaking on to that market change, right, and what's next in innovation, right? The big talks all around AI. We see a lot of push from end users trying to develop models, trying to figure out how to maximize efficiency, reliability of those assets. Are you seeing any pushes from your end users as far as making more information available. Because again, you're a component to a system of systems, and sometimes we hear from end users that we rely on different partners, OEMs aren't giving us the data. Can you talk through any of those challenges that you see or any pushes from end users to innovate?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of a huge bucket, and it depends on the end user, the industry, the customer, because we spoke yesterday again in the panel about that has been there, and it's a ton of it.
Yeah.
And you have to be very careful not to get caught in that trap of, because this data is easier to and you're comfortable with it, that you start making decisions on it, and then wind up at the end that you're just fixing a symptom and then another symptom and then another symptom, and you never really figure out from that big view of looking at the right data to make the correct decision the first time. And it's a pitfall, and we've fallen into it. We've seen customers fall into it, and I think the industry's trying to learn, how can AI help that, and how do you have all that data to get the right data and make the right decision, and I think that's where everyone's navigating right now to try to end up in the right way. Just how I have end users, I'm the end user to Schneider, to like, I can't develop that. I've got engineers and programmers that are learning and performing their jobs, and we try to automate that at our level with what's already established with digital twins and automating designs. But that next step is, how do you get AI in there intelligently to automate some of that workflow and to automate some of those decisions. We make right now intelligent machines, smart machines, and the real bottom line of that is that it's high-end controls that make very fast decisions with very good programming.
Right.
So it's not making a decision, it's reacting to how we've coded it, how we manage speed zones. Any engine, car, machine running at a steady state is always more efficient, better on power, higher quality. So we call it an intelligent machine and a smart machine because it makes a lot of decisions to normalize out, to not be up and down and energy changing. But the true smart machine is what you want to move towards, where AI is helping predictive and making decisions and taking some of the decisions away of, do I need to move my product in the package or change a speed zone to normalize? That's still a decision based on data and a person making that decision. And we're excited that it's got to be coming soon, that we can have a true smart machine that, with the data and at the right data, could start making those adjustments for you, because that's what the end user wants. We don't need to make operators that have to be qualified engineers to run a piece of equipment. You almost want, like that old saying of, like, if you want to look busy at work, you get a clipboard and stomp around and run around. For us, we can walk into a factory and kind of to that old mentality. Someone looks and an operator's running everywhere and making adjustments. So like, oh, they're working really hard. And I can tell you, you look at the operator that's doing nothing, that's on their phone or looking around bored, that's the best line you have, because it's running at a steady state, very efficient, and not needs the engagement or intervention. And sometimes, just because of culture, people want to feel involved and like they're managing a machine. And really, we're getting to a point and driving to a point where let the systems manage themselves, and it'll tell you when it needs an intervention, and it'll tell you what to do with that intervention. And we have one-point lessons and videos that can walk you through or to read you through what you need to do to fix a jam or to reset an eye. And I think that's the path you move towards, to leverage that data to make it to where it is a very high quality of life position, and kind of change the landscape of what people thought traditional factory work was. That it is easier to fill and overcome your labor shortages. One, because it's less, but two, it's high-profile positions that are attractive to that.
So I want to come back to the worker of the future, but I want to drill down a little bit into AI readiness. So again, this is all new, and I think a lot of AI projects we see out there are, what can I do with the data I've got?
Right.
But if you look at the asset builder, they are the ones who have been trained on FMEA analysis and know what kind of data to collect. They are the, in terms of reliability, they know the equipment best, right? So would you say that part of that equipment selection process now has to also address AI readiness in terms of what should be that data models to, because what I've seen in the power industry is that a lot of retrofitting of sensors to existing assets, whereas if if we did this right from the get-go, you'd actually have some idea of where to put, the bulk of your sensors.
Right. For us, and you're absolutely correct there, for us that's solved because we are building high-end automated systems. So when our controls package is the Schneider, we're taking the top end of the Alexium, the top controllers, because we know it's coming and we want to be ready. And also what makes us that smart machine right now is it is the highest functioning. So you can build conveyors still with AC motors that pull a ton of power, that it's a knob that says on off, and that's not where we thrive. There's plenty of people doing that. You can go to shows and find it everywhere, ready-made to order, buy it online and have it shipped to you, and that has its place and it has its use, like in flexible and in launch. But for us, we're always trying to position ourselves, at least for what we're building, that we're ready for the next thing when it does come. So as soon as Machine Expert Twin came out for digital twin, where we can design a full system, and historically we'd have to then release it, put it to supply chain, make the metal, bring all those parts in, get our panels, get them built, do weeks of the assembly and putting it on and power up and IO check, and then software got to start and test and do it. We can digital twin that system as soon as it's designed and already begin that work, so that when it does power on, the software is on there and we've already seen how it's going to run, and we've already solved a lot of the problems that might come up during testing because we're able to do it ahead of time. What we're interested in is that next step, because that's still a very intelligent, highly qualified controls engineer that's doing all of that work, and it's still the same amount of time. AI, I think, will help us, and it's already begun a little bit, to where it can write code for you, and it can see things that maybe you miss or don't see, and it gives us some of that resource back to where they're then focused on innovation in the next step, and not so much of their time just starting from those standard blanks and having to write all that code, which is substantial in complex systems with multiple robots and vision, that it launches that forward and does it right and removes risk. And that's attractive. What's really attractive is that your person, your resource, is you bought all that time back from them and let them really specialize in what they do and let them innovate and let them try to take it to the next level. To narrow that scope on what data is needed and how can we improve it. So that's where we're looking upstream to us of it's coming.
Yeah.
And it's almost here, maybe not launched yet, but it's coming, and when it does, we're ready for it. And we always aim to be ready for it.
You mentioned something that's like one of those buzzwords that means everything and nothing, digital twin, right?
Yeah.
But it seemed like the way you were describing that was more on the simulation side. So since you're leveraging this digital twin simulation to figure out like how your machine's going to perform and shorten like that development life cycle, like you said, you had to build, test, and then try to maximize that the efficiency later. How accurate is that preliminary modeling to what you're actually building on the production side?
Very accurate.
Really?
Yeah, and that's the great thing for us. How we're utilizing it is it's off the 3D models that we designed. It's twinning the exact same controls and sensors and functions of what we're building the machine with. So it's very advantageous to take advantage of that, so that almost literally when the physical's done and you upload the software and you put your product up here and hit go, it's a thing to see. Let it come down and robots start picking and it starts wrapping, and then you're way advanced of what would take weeks prior to that in a prior model to then get to the fine tuning and flushing it out. So
from a commercial standpoint, how has that helped you? And to put a commercial hat on now, like as an OEM, how's that help you with like proposal generation and competitiveness with customers and change orders? Like, do you feel that that's helped any of that type of stuff? Are you able to prove value ahead of time, and do they trust that?
Yeah, the for how we're utilizing it, the biggest take for us is when you think of the end users and think of, the coming soons and marketing and the windows for seasonality and launching product lines, it's time.
Yeah.
So right now, without the AI support, it doesn't buy us time of the work. It doesn't reduce that. What it does is it moves it in our milestones and our timeline. So a typical full-scale automation project for us takes 36 weeks. And there's different segments of the design and approvals and getting that done, and the supply chain, putting hundreds of thousands of parts out into the market to be fabricated or purchased to be brought in. And then the labor to piece by piece. We build it all from the ground up, every piece of it, to take up, 120 linear feet to 5 wrappers that stretch out 40 feet, and every single fastener, nut, and bolt, and then every cable we pulled. And then to arrive at the end of that, to then power up and say, okay, now that we're getting that work, for us, it's hitting the milestones that we achieve it, or we can arrive early, because now we're able to pull some of that work up front. The end game, I think, for digital twin is the end users then have the capability, and that's where we look to Shiner to kind of go full loop to assist on the customer side, that when it's in their plant and they're running their systems, and some that function on their own and do recipes and make their own changes as they launch product, they're able to do that in that environment and not disrupt their operation. Right? For me, it moved it up, and I'm in that environment. We're disrupting our operation all the time as we test and induce fault and test everything. For them, especially if it's one of their cost centers where they're just running and efficiency, it kind of changes that landscape for them, that they don't have to go out and test something and struggle and reset, try to figure out what went wrong while they're trying to produce product, because you can't turn an oven off and stop producing. You can't stop the hundreds of cakes coming at you. That's cost and waste. They can go in on their side and say, okay, if we do this change, at least did nothing break, was nothing wrong, was nothing missed. So it's kind of a full circle that they can utilize it too. But for us, it's getting that time moved up in our milestones to make sure that we can still hit delivery points and arrive quicker, faster with the right solution.
And I think to that, like you're talking the upstream processes, you're also simulating. Right now, you're simulating your performance based on, it's called a fixed production schedule, right?
Right.
So if they can increase on the front end, recipes getting better, the line speed's improving, they can simulate what that output downstream is.
Right.
Because you're essentially line balanced, and,
right.
and if you adjust any one of these subsystems, you throw everything out of whack.
Right.
So Daniel, would you say that perhaps one of the advantages you have, in your business and particularly your business model is that, traditionally we've had this CapEx, OpEx divide, right? And sometimes you have a CapEx process that's very much lowest bid. You tend to, sacrifice some things.
Right.
I presume some of that is changing, but I know in some industries that continues to be a problem, right?
Right.
What are your observations on, again, you're taking this life cycle view of things, which is very, like the right way to do it.
Right. There's absolutely tiers of automation and tiers of end users.
Yeah.
There's some up front that hit you with a specification book that's that thick. They're very standardized. Here's what we want. They tend to make the decision on the big picture of what's our OEE, what's the life cycle, what's this going to function, how can it be flexible. And there's absolutely end users out there that are as equally automated and as equally large that are not that organized yet. So they don't have a specification book. You're kind of guiding them on what they want. And in all of those tiers, there are some customers that just go straight off price. And even those customers over time turn to, okay, what value was I getting with the other things, and realize that I need that value.
It's getting to the value conversation, right?
Yes.
That's how you
get into the value
to
take it off from the cost. Yeah. And it's difficult, and especially what levels you engage. That some companies, if they're smaller companies, it's one person that's making all those decisions. And other companies will have a visit from a customer, and they bring 15 people, from safety to maintenance to quality to marketing to production to accounting, and you get into those conversations, and when you're ready with the level of product that we're able to produce, that's always easier. It's a challenge sometimes to speak to this price tag of all the value when it's something like, that's great, they don't use it. So there's a balance there where you can scale it back and not have all that, but still have it ready, because in the future, probably they will, follow the industry and go through their digital transformation, because I think everyone should be in the throes of it right now, of moving through it. And just some are a lot more further along, and people will catch up and they'll catch on.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's easier not being the first to do it, because everything is established and it starts coming standard on what you're purchasing, and you get to the hurdle and you can get over it at some point.
So what would your take be? You had mentioned you deploy these systems, 20-year service life of it. Are you saying make that decision now? Like, what's the impact of retrofit? Let's say I want more data. I want to figure out like what my efficiency is, because it looks like you're trying to maximize that line between quality, efficiency, and reliability, right? So I don't want to overperform the reliability, and that's where this modeling comes in. Are you pushing customers to be more data ready, even if they're not going to use that today? Because it seems like the cost of retrofit, in my experience, is always substantially more expensive than it is if you just kind of design that, whether or not you leverage it in the beginning or not.
Right. Yeah, and we see it both ways. Delta Systems started not as a machine manufacturer. It started as a controls company. In the 90s, where just servos were coming out. So we just go out and automate anything. So I think they automated a sailboat. They automated, a lot of manual machines to give them HMI and do controls on it. And somehow we stepped into like, oh, well, this is easy. Let's just build a machine. And yeah, it's easy. So it's kind of the growth and the path that our company took. You can walk on our floor right now, and there's 15-year-old machines that are getting a controls upgrade. And it's not to the point where it is more expensive than a new machine, but with what's coming on that versus in the past where it was AC motors and VFDs, we have the standard that we built to that is that high end. So even on a rebuild, you look at a system, and very simply speaking, it's all the mechanical stuff, just the parts and whatever, and then the controls. So it is quite easy and good for a company to send the unit back and get the controls upgrade on it, because the steel and aluminum didn't change. It's still a good machine. So you change out bearings and some wear parts and give them essentially a brand new machine, but then they're stepping into the things that we offer anyway. So there are certain aspects like remote connectivity, and especially with cybersecurity risk and everything. So those standard offerings of what we do just for even remote connectivity, there's always that concern from the customer of like, hey, is this safe? If you were moving in, how do we do it? We put every system out with the ability to do it with a gateway manager that meets all the certifications necessary. And even in earlier years where it's like, oh, we're not doing that, almost all of those customers have come around because they see the value in saying, hey, we need help with something, and you can instantly do it and not have to deploy a person to get on a plane and travel somewhere to get in and travel back, and all the costs associated with that they can remote in and address items like that. Same with the Gateway Manager. The systems are coming out, even if it's a rebuild, that it has all of the new features of what's offered in controls platforms today. So as it gets a few years down the road, and maybe they start crossing those hurdles and getting deeper in their digital transformation, that they're ready for it and their assets are ready for it. So we standard at a high level, include everything in, not as an option to go up, because it's easier for us to maintain at that high standard to be ready for what's necessary and coming.
So just having that remote connectivity has opened up other revenue streams, right? You can service more customers without having to send people all over the place. And on the end user side, it seems like there's a lot less lost production.
Right. And the ease for them and quicker recovery.
Yeah. Awesome. So I know we're almost out of time here.
Maybe we can close out with your perspectives on the future factory worker.
Okay.
So
yeah, it's a little shift. Because you're also a manufacturer, right? You got the building stuff.
Yeah.
So I want to hear that perspective.
Absolutely. No, I was going to say that, as a CEO, like nobody understands the value of the human asset better than the CEO, right? So when you look at factory of the future, I know we're in a transitional state right now, which is, it can be murky. But if you were to, let's say, encourage somebody to go into a factory-related job, what would that job, look like based on, your experience and what you've deployed there?
Yeah, I think obviously it's shifted and changed it a lot as we move forward. Personally, just for us and my company, we have the same amount of people, and people ask them like, "Oh, you're still around 65 people." What's changed is the mix. So you back it up 10 years ago, we didn't have an ERP, enterprise resource planning system. It was that accounting software ran companies, and then everything else is done on spreadsheets or someone's notepad or some database or crazy stuff like that. So we'd have like 20 assemblers that would find their parts and try to put it together, and very few lesser like front office computer working. And yeah, we're the same amount of people. We're way more efficient, and the work has shifted that we have more engineers than we have people that assemble the machinery, because that's lean and visual and ran through our ERP with material planning, and it's become very easy to forecast and manage that side of the work. So it's not like, oh, you're going to go into manufacturing, so you got to turn wrenches, and we still need that, right? We still see a huge drop in the vocational jobs out there, but at least for us, we don't need as many of them, and they have to be technically savvy because everything we do is digital now, so we don't have the boards out there where you're writing notes and having an engineer walk down and address it. They do it on their phone and put in a ECN and take a picture and reference it. It pops up on their computer and they can start working on it. And I think we're seeing that everywhere. I think it was Balaji was talking yesterday. It might have been Sridhar. When they first started working, they went and worked on a line. And he said from the break room to where he worked was like a 20-minute walk to go get tea. And it's crazy to think that means if you had something, someone had to wait 20 minutes to come out and address anything, or 20 minutes of time and travel to address anything and get anything done. And I think it's changing to where, as I mentioned, it's higher quality of life positions, and they're being formed in how our generations are coming up. That I'll tell you right now, my daughter uses AI more than I do, and she's a freshman in college. And so she utilizes these things that I speak about probably better and faster than I do, but it's just how they've come into it. And I don't think that it's the industry pushing them that way. I think it's the industry following to say, hey, to be ready, these positions, this workforce, this industry is moving towards that digital front, because that's not needed to be trained. 5 years ago, we're having to train our people how to use computers, how to take pictures and put them in. And that's the last thing we train now with new hires, because they come out more professional than me and more able than I am to navigate that. We just have to teach them then the aspects of our business. And I think everyone's going to be going that route, that the what is needed for onboarding and training is absolutely changed from what it was 5 to 10 years ago.
So even though the downside is uncertainty, the upside is no shortage of opportunity for innovation.
Right.
We just need to maybe break out of old mindsets.
Yeah, that's part of it. And sometimes that just happens naturally, and sometimes it's the push and the change that drives people towards it to accept that change.
I guess I have one last question for you. All right, this is words to leave everything from, but from a CEO's perspective, right? You have to wear two jobs. You have to run the business of today, but also plan the business of tomorrow. So you had mentioned, your daughter's a freshman. She's using AI everywhere. How is that impacting the way that you foresee your business in the manufacturing floor of tomorrow, right? Because we see a lot of resistance to change with certain maturity and different things where we have to maintain the status quo because this is the aging workforce that we have,
right,
versus getting it ready for this next generation, which is like Flintstones to the Jetsons.
Right.
How are we married? How are you dealing with that, and what's your out on that? And
I think,
what's your advice?
I think the successful way, and hopefully everyone's caught on in doing it, is not buzzwording here, but it's collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can't do it on our own. I mean, we can't. You can't do it in a silo. You have to have that feedback coming from my end users to me as an end user and all the way upstream. And I think it's going to be delivered out that way with great success. So yeah, they're developing it, but do they have the vision? Which way are they going with it? and specifically even down to our industry, we're seeing it come in at the right places and for the right reasons. It's how do you make jobs more efficient to then use that resource to do more of what the fun part of the job is, and innovation, design, and advancing. So for myself, and I think any great leader out there, they understand that they're not going to do it on their own. And if they are, it's not going to be with great success or lasting success. That's where we lean downstream and upstream, our customers, to our partners and our suppliers, of where do we need it, where are they developing it, and the more that lines up, that's where it's going to find success in everyone's business.
Awesome. Well, that's all I have. So anything else? No? And I think we can wrap it up. It's been a pleasure, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great to be at Automate. It's great to be able to do this podcast in this setting.
Yeah, it's kind of neat, right? We're changing it up a little bit.
Yeah,
so
it's exciting.
It's kind of cool on site. So definitely appreciate you taking the time to meet with us, sit down with us. But thanks everybody for tuning into this discussion with practitioners live from Automate. We hope you found these conversations as inspirational and insightful as we do. If you like the podcast, please like and subscribe. Please let us know where you think we should take this. We're trying new things, delivering into different markets. Interested in hearing your feedback. Once again, thanks for tuning in. See you next time on Practitioners Unplugged.